As the vibration of cesium marks the passage of modern time, here in the United States, in my home state of Texas, they are marching towards removing civil liberties of young and old Texans alike, with under half of the state being judgmental Christian, religionist, or otherwise invested in dictating the daily lives of individuals. They are attempting to force the beliefs of the minority upon the rest. There have been loud rumors about the possibility of a statewide bill affecting trans individuals, especially those that are non-binary or non-passing. This arose due to panic in local populations that began resulting in removal of the pre-existing ordinances that allowed trans individuals to self-identify and use the proper bathroom. After all, as we've discussed before, there are already laws in place that allow for justice to be served. We are placing the sins of cisgender men on the backs of trans women, and many are suffering due to that. This problem doesn't just affect adults, because, as we've discussed before, being trans is a result of your biology. These local elections reflect the attitudes of the individuals that are voting within them, obviously. However, these individuals are also mainly older. They are generally the grandparents and parents of children going to the schools. So today, let's talk about what happens when a kid carries those beliefs to school. Growing up, my town was rather small, and it was pretty average, at least for the area, as far as ideologies are concerned. Kids talked, adults gossiped, and the elderly nagged. Whatever the TV or radio was saying was likely to be their thoughts, or even whatever they learned in Sunday school that week. The kids were no different, even if they didn't pay attention to the news, because they still had their parents to fill them in on what to believe and how to act. Generally, that meant follow whatever's in the Bible, especially the ones I highlight for you. At least, that's what my father started me off with. I'm sure his highlighting marks aren't too much different than most others, and that was what shaped my values. I was young, but I was not unwise. I knew to keep my mouth shut, because a boy that calls himself a girl, that's frowned upon. That's disgusting. It's to be corrected, fixed, or abandoned. The next occurrence that really made me internalize hatred for LGBT individuals was whenever I was about 8, and I attempted to come out to one of my friends that had similar mannerisms to me and liked similar things, and they couldn't understand. They were disgusted. While now I understand that he was homosexual and cisgender, while I am polysexual and transgender, I didn't get that at the time I was a kid. This internalized bias resulted in hatred for other people that were similar to me and that were able to be peaceful with themselves, as well as a deep desire for validation and the need to fit into the demographic that I was pretending to be. It didn't help that in 5th grade, my body started changing in ways that I would have normally liked, but made it a very difficult task to lie to everybody else. My body had started becoming a confusing mush between two genders, and I didn't really like either one of them. So instead, I became more and more angry and more uncaring. As a result of my dysphoria and social anxiety, I began to reduce my use of public restrooms, especially those at school. At the school I went to, there had been several problems in the restroom, and we weren't allowed to leave class to go to the bathroom alone. All the restroom breaks had to be monitored by an employee, and that was typically the teacher. Well, my teacher was female. The restroom for the boys was generally chaos. There was usually a lot of bullying going on in there, as well as other general horseplay. The final incident that pretty much made me swear off public restrooms entirely happened that same year. I recall going in there one time, and there was a group of kids that were standing around a particular urinal. The kid that was standing at that urinal was one that was often subjected to mental and physical bullying. All the kids that were standing around were throwing slurs at him, generally homophobic and transphobic slurs. They began taking turns kicking him on the butt and forcing him to move against the urinal. Whenever I went into the restroom, they noticed me, and they corralled me over to the group. That was done by the use of certain words directed at me, and they had sent several over to come and move me forward. Had I felt that I could make an escape, I still don't know that I would have, because I would then be the target of these individuals. So they had me kick him as well, and once the teacher finally began calling into the restroom because of the laughing and all of that, I locked myself in one of the stalls and waited for most of them to be scattered and leave. After that day, I stopped using the restroom breaks, which resulted in my teacher questioning me. This often meant that I had to go the whole day from generally about 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock before I could go and relieve myself. I would wait until I got home, or I would wait until I was dropped off by my bus at the school where my grandmother worked. I began using unoccupied restrooms or gender-neutral ones, or I just wouldn't use them entirely if I didn't get the opportunity. This lasted for a long time. The habits that were forced upon me, such as avoiding hydration, avoiding restrooms, holding in the waste, all of that resulted in kidney stones multiple times in my life, one of which was large enough to require intervention. This is what coddling special snowflakes that believe their basic thoughts are gold can result in for children and adults. This will continue to happen as long as we are apathetic to the vocal minority hijacking the megaphone. Bullying, health problems, and more will befall the children of Texas and future generations as long as we allow these prejudices to guide us on our way. It can be stopped, and it will be stopped. However, that requires getting involved in local elections in whatever way you can. You might not be able to get out and vote, but perhaps you can support candidates on social media and volunteer your time to get individuals with good ethics elected. Thank you so much for joining me. Stay safe, my witchlings, and know that you are incredible. Until next time, bye.